What if I told you that the way we've been thinking about discipline this entire time is just completely wrong? Usually, to fix our self-control, we try to just, force it. We look for those quick life hacks, or we decide to just grind our way through incredibly difficult tasks to somehow magically build discipline. Take cold showers, for example. The internet absolutely loves to tell us that if you can just force yourself to stand in a freezing cold shower every single morning, you'll build up this ironclad willpower that'll just seamlessly translate to the rest of your life. But when you actually look at the data, scientists have found that forcing yourself to do hard things rarely works like that. Scientifically speaking, all a daily cold shower makes you good at is taking cold showers. It doesn't actually cross over to helping you put down your phone at night. Okay, let's dive into this. The real scientific detective story here actually kicks off in the 1990s. For the longest time, the old belief was that self-control was basically just a fixed personality trait. You were either born with discipline or you weren't. It was like permanent ink on your character sheet. But then, psychologists made this massive discovery. They found that self-control isn't a fixed trait at all. Instead, it operates exactly like a diminishing resource. If you play video games, you can think of it literally like a mana bar or a stamina meter. You only wake up with so much of it, and as you go about your day, it slowly but surely drains away. To really ground this mana bar concept, let's look at a scenario I am sure we have all lived through at least once. You wake up, feeling great, best intentions in the world. You say to yourself, tonight, I am absolutely going to make a healthy giant salad for dinner. But then you go to work. You spend 8 hours forcing yourself to be professional, sending overly polite emails, navigating incredibly tedious meetings. And by the time you finally get home, your self-control mana bar is completely empty. What happens? You can't even fathom the idea of chopping vegetables. You just order the pizza and collapse on the couch. And this happens because you literally exhausted your finite physical supply of self-control. So what's actually draining this resource the fastest? Well, the two absolutely biggest culprits are emotional regulation and stress. Emotional regulation is just the immense, exhausting effort it takes to suppress your feelings. Like, if you have a really difficult boss and you spend all day long holding back the very strong urge to yell at them, you are rapidly depleting your self-control reserve. And the second massive drain is stress. People in high-stress environments consistently show a significantly lower reserve of self-control. It's like stress just practically evaporates your mana bar. So, once researchers figured out what was draining self-control, the next obvious question was, where is this actually happening in the brain? By using EEG machines, which measure electrical activity, scientists made a truly revolutionary discovery. They actually located self-control in a very specific region called the anterior cingulate cortex, or the ACC for short. But here is the truly wild part. The ACC isn't some master control center in the way you'd probably imagine. Its actual literal function is just monitoring internal conflict. That's it. It literally just sits there and watches the arguments happening inside your head. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it completely flips our perspective upside down. Subjectively, when we're trying our hardest to be disciplined, it really feels like a physical battle of wills, doesn't it? It feels like we are violently wrestling with ourselves to do the right thing. But the brain's reality is entirely different. Neurologically speaking, self-control only exists when there is an active internal conflict being monitored. One part of your brain says, hey, eat the pizza. And the other part says, no, eat the salad. And as long as your ACC is actively monitoring that specific internal debate, you remain in control. Let's actually map out how this chain reaction happens in real time. Remember that difficult boss we talked about? Okay, step 1, you suppress your anger at work. Step 2, to do that successfully, you kind of have to intentionally shut off your internal awareness, right? Just so the anger doesn't bubble up to the surface. Step 3, because you've shut down that internal awareness, your brain's ACC physically cannot monitor your internal conflicts anymore. And finally, step 4, without that conflict monitoring, self-control is just completely lost. You've essentially slapped a blindfold on the exact part of your brain that keeps you disciplined. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates how stress plays such a destructive role here too. When you are super stressed out, maybe it's about an upcoming exam or some heavy relationship issue, what does your brain naturally do? It externalizes your attention. It intensely focuses on those outside problems to figure out how to survive them. But when all of your mental energy is forcefully pointed outward, you completely ignore your internal environment. You stop paying attention to your hunger, your fatigue, and crucially, your internal conflicts. The stress literally pulls your focus away from the ACC, effectively switching off your self-control. Which brings us to a somewhat eerie realization, to be honest. If monitoring the conflict literally is self-control, then the exact moment you stop arguing with yourself is the moment you lose control. I mean, think about it. You don't usually engage in a bad habit while you're fiercely, actively debating it. You lose the battle when you just stop thinking about it altogether. You know the feeling. You're lying in bed, you vaguely think, oh, I should go to sleep, but then you kind of just shrug it off. The internal debate completely fades away, and suddenly you're waving your phone around in the dark, scrolling through videos, and you didn't even make a conscious choice to do it. To truly master this whole thing, we have to recognize that our subjective feeling of needing to force willpower is basically an illusion. It's kind of like the phrase butterflies in your stomach when you're nervous. You obviously don't literally have insects flying around in your stomach. It's just the subjective way your body experiences anxiety. If you wanted to cure that feeling, you wouldn't perform stomach surgery to remove the butterflies, right? No, you'd target the actual neuroscientific mechanism in the brain that's causing the anxiety in the first place. The exact same rule applies to self-control. We have to stop trying to force discipline through sheer willpower, because willpower is just the butterfly. We need to target the ACC. So the crucial point is summarized in this incredibly powerful paradigm shift. Awareness doesn't precede control. Awareness is control. Because the part of your brain that regulates discipline is literally just an internal conflict monitor. Simply paying attention to your internal state is the exact same neurological action as exerting self-control. It's pretty mind-blowing. When you feel stressed out and you're right on the edge of making a bad choice, the scientifically validated solution is not to just grit your teeth. It is to take maybe 15 minutes, sit down, and fully re-internalize your awareness. Check in with yourself. Just observing the conflict is what turns the control center back on. We are constantly told by, motivational speakers and internet fitness gurus to just do it. But scientifically, that is terrible advice for building long-term discipline. People who overcome severe addictions or deeply ingrained bad habits, they don't simply just do it overnight. What they actually do, often through therapy or really deep reflection, is cultivate an extremely high level of awareness of their internal conflict. They literally sit with the discomfort of wanting the bad thing, and they just observe it over and over again. By keeping that conflict monitor engaged, they actually strengthen the brain's self-control circuits until eventually making the healthy choice becomes entirely natural. It is such an incredibly empowering realization. You don't need some magical, bottomless well of willpower, and you definitely don't need to torture yourself with freezing cold showers every morning. You really just need to stop externalizing your stress and start paying much closer attention to the debates happening right there inside your own head. So to wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, kind of provocative thought to take with you into your day. If scientific evidence proves that awareness itself is control, what internal conflict are you ignoring right now? Because the moment you turn your attention toward it is the exact moment you take your power back.